Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Simple Bible Study. I'm Waldine, and today we're going to talk about something that will transform how you read the Bible. Step 3 in the Simple Bible Study method is condense a paragraph down to one sentence that captures the core thought. I don't know about you, but I used to read entire chapters and couldn't tell you what they were actually about. I'd get lost in all the details and miss the main point. But once I learned this simple 4-step process, everything changed. So I'm going to walk you through each step using real Bible passages so you can see exactly how it works. So let's get started. Step 1 is read the passage and identify the main subject. Ask yourself, what person, thing, or concept is this passage primarily about? We're just looking for who or what the passage is focused on. Let me give you an example. Let's look at Ephesians 2, 8, and 9. Paul writes, "For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast." So what's the main subject here? What is Paul talking about? He's talking about salvation, right? Specifically, he's talking about how we're saved. So our subject is salvation. Now let's try another one. Romans 8:28. It's shorter. It says, "And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose." This one's a little trickier. The verse mentions God, people who love God, all things working together. So what's the main subject? I think the subject here is all things. Specifically, how all things function in the lives of the believer. God is mentioned, but the focus is on what happens with all things in our lives. It's a subtle but important distinction. So, step 1 is just figuring out what the paragraph is mainly talking about. Step 2, determine the primary action or assertion. Now that you know what the passage is about, what's being said or done regarding that subject? Look for the controlling verb or the main claim. We're finding what the passage says about the subject. Let's go back to Ephesians 2, 8, and 9. We said the subject is salvation. Now, what does Paul say about salvation? He says it's by grace, through faith, and it's a gift, not from works. The primary assertion is that salvation is given by God's grace, not earned by human effort. That's what Paul is claiming about salvation. Now, what about Romans 8:28? The subject was all things. What does Paul say happens with all things? They work together for good for those who love God. The primary assertion is that God causes all things to work together for the good of his people. See how this works? Find the subject, then find what's being said about it. Now, step 3 is where people often struggle. We need to strip away supporting details. Everything in the Bible is important, but what we're trying to do is find the core message, the core meaning of a passage. It's easy to keep too much detail. So we need to remove the examples, the elaborations, and the background information, keeping only what's essential to the core thought. We're cutting out anything that's extra. Let me show you what I mean. Let's look at a longer passage, 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It's not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. So there's a lot there, right? So what's the subject? Love. And what's the primary assertion Paul is making about love? He's telling us what love actually is, its nature and character. But look at all those details. Patient, kind, doesn't envy, doesn't boast. It's not arrogant or rude. It bears all things and believes all things. Those are all specific examples. They're important, but they're supporting details illustrating the main point. So, what's the core truth Paul wants us to grasp? I would say the core truth is love is fundamentally selfless and sacrificial. It's defined by putting others first, not by feelings or self-interest. So we're looking past the specific characteristics to see the bigger truth they're pointing to. Here's another example. Matthew 5, 3 through 10. These are the Beatitudes. So Jesus gives us 9 specific blessings. Blessed are the poor in spirit, those who mourn, blessed are the weak, and so forth. That's a lot of detail. But what's the core thought? All those specific Beatitudes are examples pointing to a larger truth. Blessing in God's kingdom comes to those who are spiritually humble and dependent on God, not to the proud and self-sufficient. The world calls the powerful and self-reliant blessed, but Jesus reverses that. All right, final step. Step 4. Combine into one clear sentence. So you take your subject and your primary assertion and merge them into a single sentence that captures the paragraph's central idea. We're putting it all together here. So let's do Ephesians 2, 8, and 9. The subject is salvation. Remember, the assertion, it's given by God's grace through faith, not earned by works. So one sentence might be, salvation is God's gracious gift received through faith, not earned by human works. Now, Romans 8:28. The subject, all things, remember, the assertion, those things work together for good for believers. One sentence might be, God causes all circumstances to work together for the good of those who love him. Now, what about that longer passage, 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7? Subject is love. The assertion is it's selfless and sacrificial, putting others first. So one sentence might be, true love is selfless and others-focused rather than self-seeking. So we took that big passage and boiled it down to a few words that capture its core. That captures what Paul is actually teaching us about the nature of love. And for the Beatitudes, the subject, who receives blessing in God's kingdom, the assertion is that the spiritually humble and dependent, not the proud and self-sufficient. So one sentence might be, God blesses those who are spiritually humble and dependent on him, not the proud or self-reliant. See how this works? We've taken complex passages and distilled them down to their core truths. Not just what the author is doing, but what the author is teaching. Now, let me show you how to actually use this when you're reading the Bible. Say you're reading Mark 1, 40 through 45, where Jesus heals the leper. The passage tells us a leper comes to Jesus, begs for healing. Jesus touches him and heals him, then tells him not to tell anyone, but to go show himself to the priest. But the man tells everyone, and Jesus can't enter towns openly anymore. So there's a lot happening there. So let's use our 4 steps. Step 1, what's the main subject? Now, you might say it's the healing of the leper, but I'd say the subject is actually Jesus' authority and compassion in the face of ritual uncleanness. Step 2, what's the primary assertion? What does Mark want us to see? That Jesus has both the power and the willingness to heal even the most unclean. He's not limited by the law's restrictions. And then step 3, strip away the supporting details. The specific instructions to the priest, the man's disobedience, the effect on Jesus' ministry, they're all important, but they support the main point about who Jesus is and what he can do. So step 4, 1 sentence, Jesus demonstrates his divine authority and compassion by willingly healing even the ritually unclean. Now you have the core thought. The details enrich that. But I guess what I'd like to say is this can seem a bit overwhelming. If you just practice it, it gets easier. And you can join me as I post videos about examples, and you can see how we're doing this. The last thing I'll mention is, while we need to get rid of supporting information so we can understand the core, we don't want to be too vague or just describe what the author is doing instead of what the author is teaching. Some people say things like, Paul talks about love, or Jesus gives blessings. That doesn't capture the truth that's being taught. Your sentence should communicate the claim or truth the passage is making. Your sentence should be specific enough to capture the unique point of that particular passage, but simple enough that you can remember it. There's a balance, not too detailed, not too vague. You want precision without complexity. All right, so step 1, read and identify the main subject. What is this passage primarily about? Step 2, determine the primary action or assertion. What truth is being taught about the subject? Step 3, strip away supporting details, remove examples, elaborations, secondary points. Step 4, combine into one clear sentence. Merge the subject and the assertion into one statement that captures the core truth. That's it. 4 simple steps you can use on any Bible passage. Here's my challenge for you. Pick a passage you're reading this week and try these 4 steps. Write down your 1-sentence summary. You'll be amazed at how much clearer the passage becomes. The last thing I'll say, the passage that you pick should be about one thing. So often Bibles are split into smaller sections, not chapters, but smaller topical sections, or you can use a paragraph. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time on Simple Bible Study.